Hi, everybody. This is James Christian with rudimentaluniversity.com, and today's video is entitled How I Went from OK to 7-time tenor drum champion. So this is really just my story. I haven't really told it before, so I wanted to let you know because I thought some people might find it interesting and find some good inspiration from it. So anyway, I grew up in a very small Texas town northeast of Dallas, and literally the town had one stoplight, so it was pretty small. The high school at the time was classified as 3A, which if you don't know, Texas system, they redid it a few years ago, and now it would be considered 4A. But just to give you an idea, my graduating class had 140 people in it, and we were the biggest class that had ever gone through the school. So it's a pretty small town. It's bigger now, but that was the place where I was at the time. And the person who taught us percussion, he was a saxophone player. He did absolutely the best he could, but it was he just wasn't a percussionist, and he did a good job bringing in some people every so often to help out with teaching drum set and different things like that at the high school. But anyway, I've seen the videos from earlier years, and they were always functional and serviceable, but they weren't really learning like what the best schools were preparing people for to go on to college and things like that. So anyway, when I was in middle school, I was doing okay I was doing the best of what I knew, but a guy named Rick Beckham just happened to move into the town, and the band was doing some kind of fundraiser at a gas station, I believe. And he happened to see them at one point, and he came and talked to them, and he had marched with the 27th Lancers and Cadets Drum and Bugle Corps, and he told the band director that, hey, this is my background. Would you like someone to help work with your drum line? And so he was like, sure, I'd love that. So anyway, Rick started helping out. This was when I was in middle school, and the technique that they learned and everything, it was, as I look back on what I learned, I had to unlearn a lot of bad habits. So Rick started working with them, and I took lessons from him for a little while in 7th grade. And then in 8th grade, I started coming up to the weekly rehearsals the high school was doing. And of course, as an 8th grader, I was really struggling to keep up with those high schoolers, but it was a good kick in the butt to keep me moving and getting better. And I definitely got a lot better. So my 7th grade year, when I'd first started taking lessons, I barely made the all-region band, and if you don't have that in your area, it's basically like what all the schools in the area go and compete. They learn a etude, or several etudes, and then they perform, and the judges sit behind a curtain and judge based on how you sound without seeing the player. And so I barely made the all-region band in 7th grade, and then in 8th grade, I actually competed in 2 all-region contests, one for the small schools and one for the large schools, and I got first year in both of those. So I made a lot of progress in that first year. And then in high school, Rick continued to teach the drumline for my freshman and sophomore year, and we got to be pretty good. And he decided to bow out after that. So my junior year in high school, I basically became the percussion teacher of the drumline. And I actually wrote some of the parts and all of that. As I look back on it, my band director gave me a lot of trust and responsibility as a high schooler. But anyway, I did well at the all-region bands, and then in Texas it goes to area, then state. And so I was always one of the top 3 area every year. And then the last 2 years I made it in the all-state band. And so my senior year in high school, the Texas Percussive Arts Society decided to have its own drumline contest and individuals contest that fall, and I won the tenor drum contest. So that was my first big contest I ever won, and so that was pretty exciting. So anyway, all of those things would not have happened if Rick had not just volunteered his time. He never got paid for doing any of that, and he invested a lot of time into people, and just because he believed in helping people drum better. And so I wouldn't be where I am now if he hadn't done that. So that's good lesson in just the value of teaching and the value of helping people and volunteering your time and bringing people things that you find joy in. So anyway, I did that. After high school, I auditioned with the Marine Corps, band program, and I'd actually wanted to get into the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps, but they didn't have any openings at the time, so they said it was easier to get in if you get into the band first if you're already in. So I went ahead and did that, and I made it into that, and I did that for 4 years. During that time, Colonel Truman Crawford, who had been their director for years, he retired, and they were in a bit of a transition time, so I was not quite sure. And then, unfortunately, the last 2 years I was in the Marines, there was some leadership issues that I would just say were rather toxic, and I got pretty burnt out on it. We traveled all the time. We did 300 performances a year, and it was just a pretty grueling schedule. So I was just like, I'm done with music. I don't want that for a job or anything. I just want to do something else. And so I actually looked into becoming a counselor, and so I went to school, and that's actually what my bachelor's degree is in counseling. And so I did that. I got some extra training in life coaching and really enjoyed that. And I was looking at that as a career. While I was still in the Marines, I started going to the DCA contest every year. And the first year I went, I got second place on tenors. And then every year I went after that, I won. Again, that's just thanks to the advanced training techniques that Rick Beckham taught me. And I started applying those to tenors and started building off of that. And so when I went to college, I was still going to the contests every year, because in DCA, once you've marched with a senior corps, then you're in for life. You can keep going to their I&E contest. So I'd gotten married in college, and my wife was going to the drum contest with me. And after I'd started into all the counseling things, I was looking for the next step. She was like, I really think you ought to take another look at music. That really seems to be your passion. And so I thought about it. Enough time had passed that I was able to look back on my Marine years with a little bit of perspective. And I really had a lot of dreams on wanting to teach high school drumline and really build them up to do some things I knew a drumline could do at the high school level, but hadn't really seen a whole lot of groups even attempt. And so I went back to the University of North Texas. I got some continuing education courses in music education, and then I got hired, and I taught a couple different places, and my longest stint was at Paris, Texas. And I was really proud of the things we accomplished there. They were a 4A school, but the drumline had previously won the Progressive Arts Society drumline contest. And so I came and took that and kept building on it. We were going to contests where we were going against 5A and 6A schools. 6A is the biggest in Texas. And we were frequently in the top 2 or 3 at those contests, and we were doing really well. And I never gauged success on trophies, because you have up years and down years and different factors and judges who like you and don't, and different things like that. I always judged, are we achieving things? And the last year we were there, the snare line was playing like 30-second note paradiddles. Like, we got the marimbas playing with 6 mallets and not just block chord things, but actually like manipulating them, and some pretty good bass splits and all that kind of stuff. So there were just different things I was always trying to build and push. And the last year I was there, the band actually made it to state for their first time in the school's history. So I was pretty proud of all of those accomplishments. I may post some of the videos at some point on those, but if you go check out Paris Drumline's Facebook page, there's a lot of videos on there, and you can kind of see some of the things they did. My years were 2012 to 2006, or spring of 2017. So anyway, did that, and I really enjoyed that. In the last video, I talked about how I transitioned to running a percussion magazine for a while, and I had gone to teaching part-time with a high school. I was just working there at drumline after school and in the spring. But COVID came, and the magazine the funding just wasn't coming through, because a lot of companies were struggling on finances. So anyway, I went back to teaching full-time, and I've shifted to teaching elementary music now. That way I don't have quite as busy of a schedule. No after-school rehearsals or football games or Saturday contests or indoor drumline contests or any of that kind of stuff. So I'm really enjoying this now, and I've been able to focus a lot more on composing and arranging, and so that's my big interest right now. So I'm going to be making more videos on that in the near future. But anyway, I just wanted to tell my story. I thought some of you might find it interesting. And I think just the big takeaway on that is it doesn't matter where you came from, doesn't matter if you're in a small town, doesn't matter what resources you have, if you have a lot of money, if you don't. It really comes down to the people in your life, people who are willing to invest and help, but also you got to take advantage of those opportunities. So I will say when I first took lessons with Rick, I didn't enjoy them. Like it was he made you work hard and build your muscles and a lot of chop building stuff. And I just didn't like it. And I actually quit lessons for a little while, but then I started to see the difference. And so I got back into it, and I met with Rick throughout my junior and senior year. I didn't mention once a week, we would just get together on Saturdays, and he was starting to go to DCA at that point. We were getting ready for it. And I was doing different contests. And so we'd play for each other, and he got me to a high enough level that I could actually know what he was doing, that I could watch him and give him some decent feedback. And that was pretty cool. At Paris, the last year I was there, I had a snare drummer who had gotten to the level where I felt like he could actually critique me well. And actually I had a couple students, so I'd play for them, and then they could give me feedback. And it's cool as a teacher when you see your students get to that level where they can thoroughly critique what you're doing. So anyway, if you're considering teaching or helping people learn your craft, then I'd say go for it and see what you can do to help people. And also, if you have different opportunities come up, take advantage of those opportunities. If you've got an opportunity to work with someone who you admire, who's got good skills or things like that, then definitely use that and find ways to be creative. And I always enjoyed writing music, and I sought out different opportunities to do that. Like I said, I started in high school when I was writing for my drumline. If you're a high school student, like, I don't know, write a cadence or something. Just write something that people want to work on. And it may be terrible the first time, and that's okay. But just work on it and get better at it, and you'll learn and take feedback from people. My stuff was always that I wrote it too hard at the beginning. So tip to start with something simpler, and people will like that and find it accessible, and then you can build from there. Anyway, I hope you find that interesting and gain some good motivation from that to keep going. And I'd love to hear your story. So post in the comments. How big was your school? What did you come from? Was your program any good? What helped you get better? Was it a teacher? Was it something? Now it might be YouTube videos and stuff like that. There's a lot of resources available now that didn't used to be. So I'd love to hear different things that have helped you along the way. So share those, and let's encourage each other to keep making great music and get better at our craft and just enjoy it. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.
And if you missed my story about the percussion magazine that became a casualty to COVID, check out this video.